Markham's journey challenges the logic of films like Back to the Future, revealing that manipulating time can have disastrous and unexpected consequences. Driven by deep grief and the desire to reunite with a loved one, he believed that engineering a time travel device would allow him to turn back time, offering a vital warning and perhaps preventing a tragedy. This longing transformed into an overwhelming obsession that consumed his existence. But before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. In 1997, a self-taught electrical systems student named Mike Markham entered a mechanism he had assembled in his shed, walked into the field it produced, and vanished. Evaporated. No body, no goodbye, no trace. His shed burned down that very night. Experts found molten metal, ruined coils, and a nearly 2-meter-wide circular scar charred into the cement floor. But no human sign, no evidence of Mike anywhere. The only piece that survived the firestorm was a handwritten note, kept under a steel toolbox. It read, "It doesn't refer to time, but to how you perceive situations." For 29 years, the internet debated what had happened to him. Time travel, state kidnapping, a portal to another sphere. Some people claimed he had died, others insisted he never existed. And then, in 2022, Mike Markham reappeared, older, exhausted, carrying a wooden trunk full of notebooks, sketches, and 29 years of evidence. But what he brought back wasn't evidence of time travel. It was something far, far more serious. This is his story. The Find. Mike Markham grew up in rural Missouri in the 1970s and 80s. No certificates, no resources, no contacts. Just a boy dangerously obsessed with electricity, scavenging for transformers in junkyards, mastering electronics on his own with library books, spending every spare hour in a makeshift garage behind a rented house, building spark-firing devices, Tesla generators, Jacob's rails, anything capable of producing high-voltage arcs. The beginning of the experiments. He didn't have a script. He simply adored the brutal, terrifying power of it. And at some point in the early 90s, that fixation led him to something he should never have considered. He had built a Jacob's ladder, 2 V-shaped metal rods with high voltage generating a beam that rose between them, a classic physics experiment. But Mike noticed something no textbook had instructed him to do. When he placed a basic laser beam across the beam, the arc's behavior changed. It became more steady, more focused, and nearby items began to tremble. At first, he assumed it was a visual trick, the bright flash of the arc impairing his eyesight. But he couldn't ignore it. He began to assess them in an organized manner, placing small metal items between the rods, screws, rings, coins, and sometimes for a split second they would disappear. They wouldn't move. They wouldn't fall. They would vanish. Visible one moment, they would evaporate the next, and then return. It was at that instant that Mike Markham's trajectory split in two. Everything before that point and everything after. The connection. He became fixated. He recorded everything. Tension scales, external factors, drawings of each setup. He was convinced he had stumbled upon something concrete. He just didn't understand what it was, and he needed someone to validate that he wasn't unbalanced. In January 1995, he picked up the phone and dialed Coast to Coast AM, the legendary late-night radio show hosted by Art Bell. Mike was restless, stammering between sentences. He told Art that he had assembled a device in his garage capable of making items disappear from reality for split seconds, and then reappear at the exact same spot, untouched. Art Bell, a man who had heard every imaginable kind of testimony, leaned closer to listen better. "How do you understand that the item disappears?" he questioned. "Couldn't it simply be a fantasy caused by the lightning?" Mike's reply left Art speechless. "I understand that it disappears because I can notice it," Mike said. "When the field is right, everything in the barn seems off. The air seems to hold its breath. And it's not just me who notices this. My dog no longer comes near the barn. Birds don't land on the roof. There's something about this field that makes living things wish they were anywhere else." There was a pause, a real pause. Then Art said, cautiously, "Mike, I want you to document everything. Bring back evidence, film scenes, and contact me again." That invitation changed everything. The progression. In the following periods, Mike's tests progressed rapidly. He wasn't content with just making things blink. He wanted to understand, control, expand upon it. And for that, he needed more power, much more than his homemade devices could deliver. So, in the summer of 1995, Mike did something unthinkable. He stole 6 large transformers from an isolated power station. He placed them all in the shed, assembling a system capable of extracting a massive amount of energy from the wiring. And when he activated everything, the device consumed so much power that it caused a voltage drop in several neighboring houses. Lights flickered, machines stopped. Technicians from the electrical company followed the trail of the malfunction directly to Mike's warehouse. He was arrested, prosecuted for theft, and endangering others, sentenced to 60 days in jail. Most people would have given up there, but not Mike. Those 60 days made him even worse. He spent every waking second devising new plans, polishing accounts, designing a more powerful version of the device, terrifying side effects. When he left prison, he was more fixated than before. At the end of 1995, he called Coast to Coast AM again. But this time, Art Bell immediately noticed something different. Mike's tone had changed, more somber, more pressing, almost desperate. Mike recounted that he had rebuilt the system, this time legally, with purchased parts. He polished the draft, improved the controls, better balanced the laser, and the results were no lighter. "The items aren't merely flickering anymore, Art," he declared. "They disappear for seconds, sometimes longer. And when they return, sometimes they're corrupted." He reported placing a wooden cube among the beams. It vanished for 3 seconds. When it reappeared, it was extremely cold, much colder than the surrounding space, as if it had remained in another location, a frigid site. He tested it with a plant. It disappeared and returned dry, as if days had passed instead of moments. Art Bell's tone completely changed. He had tested it on a mouse. The creature disappeared for 5 seconds. When it returned, it was pulsing, but completely lost, writhing uncertainly, refusing to feed. 2 days later, it died. "Mike," Art said, and you could feel the apprehension in his tone. "You need to stop doing this alone. Seek out real doctors. Get monitored. This is beyond what a person should be doing in a shed." But in Mike's reply, it was noticeable. He was no longer answering. The fixation had taken over everything, and the worst was yet to come. The last contact and the disappearance. At the end of February 1996, Mike made his last call to Coast AM. And what he said that morning astonished even Art Bell's audience. Mike reported that he had widened the field. He could no longer merely target small items. He stated that he could partially enter it. And when he did that, time seemed different. "It's like everything slows down, except you," Mike said. "You can see events happening in slow motion. You can move between seconds. And when you withdraw, you notice that more time has passed than you felt, as if you had been withdrawn for longer than you thought. Total muteness in frequency." Then Art asked the question everyone was pondering. "Mike, are you claiming you built a time machine?" Mike hesitated. Then he replied zealously, "I don't understand if it's a time jump, but it's something. The field messes with common vision, or common existence. I don't understand which one. But I'm close, Art. I just need more cargo. And a superior balancer." Art tried to persuade him to stop, to call experts, to follow a protected path. But the fear had already taken hold. Mike commented on state surveillance, people spying on his residence, other people's cars on the road. The call ended with a vow. "I'll call back in March. I'll have evidence, media, data, everything you requested." The urban legend that call never happened. March 1997. Mike had completely disappeared. Line cut. Envelopes returned. People who passed by the property said the place seemed uninhabited. Then the shed caught fire. Experts found molten metal, ruined coils, and that circular scar of almost 2 meters in the cement floor. But no corpse, no Mike, merely the reminder under the toolbox. It doesn't refer to time. It refers to how you perceive situations. Experts judged that he had possibly escaped before the fire, perhaps even causing it. The case was closed, the missing persons file kept, but never thoroughly analyzed. But online, the story exploded. By the summer of 1997, Mike Markham was already a virtual myth. Groups were flooded with guesses. He had gone to tomorrow, returned to yesterday, opened a gateway, been shot down by the state, or simply invented it all. The show Coast to Coast AM focused entire episodes on the enigma. But wait, it gets even more serious. The myth becomes dense. In the summer of 1998, an internet searcher found a newspaper clipping from 1930. A corpse had been found on a California shoreline, a man between 30 and 35 years old, wearing strangely modern clothing for the time. In his pocket, a small cubic metal mechanism full of keys and unknown markings. The item was depicted, a blurry photo. But when the photo was polished and posted online, people noticed something unsettling. It looked like something a 90s fan would build. Lights reminiscent of LEDs, a style very similar to Mike's sketches. Could Mike have traveled to 1930 and perished there? Could that mechanism have been one of his adjustment pieces? The evidence was weak, but it fueled the myth. Until Mike Markham came to be seen as the guy who built a time machine and was found dead in 1930, ages before it even existed. For years, that's where the narrative stopped. An unsolvable enigma, a warning whispered in late-night mystery groups, until 2006. Now note this part. In September 2006, Dr. Harold Voss, a physics professor in Oregon who ran a blog about parallel science, opened his mailbox and found a text that made his hair stand on end. The author claimed to be Mike Markham. The text stated, "I understand that individuals think I have passed away. I am not. But I am not fully here either. The artifact operated, but not in the way I anticipated. I am sending you drafts, third-line vortex adjustment base. Do not assemble, just analyze. Understand what I have failed to achieve." Attached were technical drawings far more complex than anything Mike had ever mentioned on the radio. Wiring plans, field formulas, warnings about biological damage. Dr. Voss read the text 3 times, tried to replicate it, but returned. He followed the IP address to a regular library in Kauai, Hawaii. The patrols checked. No one remembered anyone matching Mike's profile. Another dead end. And the enigma only deepened. The return. And then came 2022. 29 years after Mike Markham disappeared. Andrew and Melanie Carter had just acquired an old country house in rural Ohio. During renovations in the attic, they found a rough wooden box hidden behind the fence, in a corner that hadn't been touched in a long time. The label read, "M. Markham, do not unravel until the correct point." Inside were notebooks filled with handwritten notes, drawings of wires, and periods ranging from 1995 to 2021. Electronic components, some burnt, others perfect, wrapped in protective covers. And a Polaroid photo showing a man next to a huge piece of metal in the shape of a circle. Date, June 21st, 2021. In the background it was written, "It worked, but not the way I imagined." But here's the most bizarre part. One of the notebooks had the exact address of the house where the Carters now lived. Next to it, a note, "Strong magnetic field, perfect site for protected storage. They'll find it when they get to the right spot." How did Mike know about that address? How did he know the Carters would buy that particular residence? How could a hidden chest years ago contain papers dated 2021? Andrew and Melanie spread the story on Reddit. Within days, it went viral. Individuals who had been following Mike's case for ages began sending messages. And then, 3 weeks later, Andrew answered a call. Number ignored. The tone on the other end was weary, worn, but clear to anyone who had listened to those old tapes. "This is Mike Markham speaking. I heard you found my chest. I'd like to clarify what happened. Can I come over?" Mike's explanation. In October 2022, Mike Markham arrived at the Carters' house looking much older than his 59 years, bearing the marks of someone consumed by something invisible. He explained that, in 1997, while using a powerful technological device, he didn't travel through time, but ended up becoming out of sync with reality, like a poorly tuned radio. This displacement affected how others perceived him. Although he was present, others began to forget his name, his face, and his very existence almost instantly. Over the decades, the effect worsened, preventing him from holding down jobs or maintaining relationships, as no one could retain his image in their memory. Mike discovered that the device didn't manipulate time, but rather the quantum elements that allow someone to be seen and remembered, and concluded that human existence depends on the memory of others. On the verge of becoming completely imperceptible, he sought out the Carters to leave records and notebooks of his discovery before his last link to reality broke. After his departure, Andrew and Melanie Carter felt the immediate effect. The memory of the encounter and Mike's appearance began to slip away like water through their fingers, leaving only the physical notes they had written. Currently, the Carters can barely remember the conversation, relying solely on the material records to prove that the encounter occurred. Mike Markham continues to wander the world like a faint trace, a physical presence that the human mind can no longer grasp, living in the voids of others' perception, alive but irremediably forgotten for having broken his own capacity to be real to others.